Lord Buddha has rightly said, just as in candle cannot burn without fire, man cannot live without a spiritual life. Our honorable speaker truly justifies the quote as his life is an inspiring journey for every person out here who would like to embrace spiritualism into their lives. Welcoming Sri Rajesh Rabindranath ji with an heartfelt applause. He is a known expert of Vedanta, scriptures, yoga, and modern management. He has a keen inclination for Vedanta and scriptures since graduation. And his deep interest in spirituality took him on a never-ending journey of self-awareness and self-awakening. To attain his spiritual goal, he addresses in various programs, conferences, seminars in New Jersey, USA on Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta to bring out the message of Vedic scriptures in the light of modern science and management. He is also an esteemed co-founder of Project Self USA and is on a mission to enlighten, prepare and grow people spiritually and guide them to understand and follow the real meaning of life. I am so privileged to welcome Sri Rajesh Rabindranath ji to enlighten us with his deep and life-changing message.
Namaste. My salutations to spiritual seekers from all parts of the world. The topic of my discussion today is spirituality and emotional intelligence. The previous speaker, respected Acharya Vivek ji, had already laid the foundation for this topic. What I'm going to do is just build on top of that. Friends, let me just organize today's discussion into two parts. The first part is, let's try to understand a little bit about what exactly is emotional intelligence from a scientific perspective. Then we will try to connect how spirituality facilitates emotional intelligence and also how the emotional intelligence support the spiritual life. This is how we are going to organize the topic. So let's try to understand what is emotional intelligence. I don't have to tell you, emotional intelligence is one of the most famous buzzword in the modern world. It's applicable in academics. It is applicable in corporate world. It is there in psychology. It is there in neurology. So it cut across multiple domains. So then now the question is, what exactly is emotional intelligence? The great neuropsychologist of the modern world, Dr. Daniel Goleman, has defined this emotional intelligence as the ability to perceive, interpret, demonstrate, control our emotions. This is what is emotional intelligence. So it is the ability to understand our emotion. It is the ability to control our emotion. It is to regulate our behavioral response with respect to an emotion. It also covers to understand the emotion in other people and relate with the other people with empathy. This is the scope of the emotional intelligence. Now, when we talk about emotional intelligence, another important question which often we overlook is, what exactly is an emotion? The psychology defines emotions as a mental state brought on by a neurophysiological change. So because of that change, what happens? There will be a lot of thoughts, there will be a lot of feeling, and there will be behavioral responses. So there will be thoughts, feelings, and behavioral response creates a mental state, and that is what is emotion. And typically, this will be associated with the experience of a pleasure or displeasure. This is an emotion. And the research on this emotion, it is happening a lot. And the scientists say that there are three factors with respect to an emotion. So first one is a subjective experience. Let's try to understand this. whenever we encounter an experience, how I take that experience internally. This is what the subjective experience. And that will be followed by a physiological response of the mind. And that response will create a mental state. And according to that mental state, there will be a behavioral expression or response. These are the three factors that is happening associated with an emotion. The first one is there will be an experience. Second one will be there will be a physiological response. And the third one is there will be a behavioral or an expressive response. So, the science of emotional intelligence or the skill of emotional intelligence tells me that you cannot control what experience you have in your life. That is going to be there. It is not going to be always the pleasant experiences. There could be unpleasant experiences, there will be stressful situation. But the second aspect, the psychological response or that response, you do have some control. And the behavioral response with respect to that psychological change or the physiological response, there you have control. So your ability to understand what exactly is the psychological response and your ability to control the behavioral or external response associated with that is simply known as emotional intelligence. And this is one of the most sought after skill of the modern world. Because once upon a time, we believed that the IQ, if somebody has a high IQ, they are going to be the successful people. But now the theory has changed. Everybody knows that even if you have the highest IQ of the world, if you do not have control over your emotion, your IQ will be useful only in conducive situations. And we all know that for sure that the life is not going to always have the conducive situation. So if you want to perform under pressure, if you want to perform under difficult situations, you need to master the skill called emotional intelligence. This is emotional intelligence. And Dr. Daniel Goleman identified four major pillars of this emotional intelligence. The first one is the self-awareness, your ability to understand what is happening in your mind, your ability to understand your emotions, your ability to understand the change in the psychology that is happening in your mind. That is number one. Number two is self-control. Self-control means your ability to control the emotions, because sometimes you may feel to do certain things and your ability to put a break and your ability to change the course of action. And the third one is social intelligence, your ability to connect with the other people, your ability to relate with other people, your ability to connect with other people using emotions is called social intelligence. And the last one is called empathy, the ability to understand the emotions of the other people, the situation of the other people, and connect with them. This is emotional intelligence in a nutshell, in a 5 minutes version of the emotional intelligence. Now let us see how this emotional intelligence is supported by spirituality and how the emotional intelligence supports the spirituality. You will be amazed to see how the scriptures, especially the Vedic scriptures, highlights the importance of spirituality. Sorry, the emotional intelligence. The Upanishads tells, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo. The Bhagavad Gita tells, the person who has the mind in his control means he will succeed. If you do not have control over your mind becomes your worst enemy. This is nothing but the emotional intelligence. Friends, if you want to perform in the world outside, you need to make sure that you have complete control over the tool you are using. For example, if you're driving a car, it's better that you have complete control over that car, because otherwise you will end up in an accident. If you are using a computer, if you want to take the best out of it, you need to know how to operate the computer. Otherwise, you will be underutilizing that resource. So the greatest tool a person have, according to the Vedantic yogic scriptures, is your mind. So if you do have control over your mind, your thoughts, emotions, and how you respond, then your mind becomes your best friend. And if you do not have control over your mind, that mind becomes the worst enemy. So the first step in building emotional intelligence is you need to take charge of your mind, and you need to put self effort. So the Gita tells, Uttaret Atmanatmanam, na Atmanam Avasathayet, Atmaiha Atmano Bandhu, Atmaiha Ripuratmana. That means you need to work, you need to lift yourself by your own self effort. And the Bhagavad Gita beautifully gives out a two-step approach to build the emotional intelligence. The whole philosophy of the Gita, the whole vision of the Gita is that whatever your goal you want to pursue in your life, you need to have a stable and a controlled mind. A stable and a controlled mind is nothing but emotional intelligence, right? Your ability to monitor your emotions, your ability to make sure that the emotions are not going out of the boundary, the ability to control your action, that is what is known as samatvam. And that is a prerequisite according to Gita, to pursue any goals of the life. So in the second chapter of the Gita, 48th verse Krishna tells, Sitya Sithyo Samo Bhutva Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. Yoga is the evenness of the mind. This is emotional intelligence. Because Sithya Sithyo Samo Bhuta, whatever is your external experience, your ability to stay calm, your ability to stay controlled is known as yoga. That is very important. And then Krishna also discussed this in the 6th chapter. He tells, like, when when you have complete control over the mental activities, you can advance in spiritual practice. The same thing is said by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra. Yogaha chitta vritti nirodha. Yatro uparamati chittam niruddham yoga sevayat. Tatra chaivatmanatmanam pasyanatmanim hyati. Bhagavad Gita. So when you have complete control over your mental activities, then you can go to the advanced spiritual stage. So in other words, what we need to conclude here is that emotional intelligence is a prerequisite to pursue the spiritual path. A person who do not have emotional intelligence cannot pursue the spiritual path. In other words, so that is how the spirituality is connected with the emotional intelligence. In other words, it is emotional intelligence that facilitates the growth in spirituality. And as far as spirituality is concerned, emotional intelligence is a mandatory requirement. So whether you are pursuing a secular goal like meaning betting improved performance at work, or whether you want to pursue a higher spiritual goal, emotional intelligence is an absolute must-have. And finally, we'll take 2 minutes. The Bhagavad Gita lays out a beautiful path. How do you build this emotional intelligence? Krishna brilliantly discusses a two-step approach. The first thing is, he tells you need to have a pure mind and you need to have a controlled mind. And two spiritual sadhanas expounded by Krishna to achieve these emotional intelligence. Number one, Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is means you do proper work with proper attitude. And the second one is Upasana Yoga, the practice of meditation. The meditation is your ability to gain control over your thoughts and emotion. So these two together is going to give you that samatvam. Samatvam means your ability to keep your mind under control in any circumstances. This is going to make you emotionally intelligent. This is the summary of the whole discussion. So let's summarize this in 2 minutes. Emotional intelligence is your ability to understand your emotions, regulate your emotion, and control the response. It means your response in the external world with respect to emotional disturbances. So this is emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence is a highly sought after skill, not only in the spiritual world, but in the corporate world, in the academic world, in the psychology, in everywhere. And we found that this is not just relevant in the scientific management circle, but it is highly relevant in the spiritual tradition also, because if you do not have emotional intelligence, you cannot advance in your spiritual path. Also, we saw that this is not a new discovery, even though this got highlighted in the recent times, but this emotional intelligence was a subject of interest of the ancient rishis, and we can see a lot of discussion on emotional intelligence in Bhagavad Gita. With this, let me conclude my talk, and I'm so happy and thankful to all of you for joining this wonderful conclave. And on behalf of Project Self USA, Project Self Bharat, and United Consciousness, I would like to thank all of you for attending this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rajesh, for being with us here and encouraging us with this fundamental topic of emotional intelligence. You rightly said that emotional intelligence leads to spirituality, and spirituality contributes back into making us emotionally intelligent. Three factors of emotions that you mentioned are very important for the audience sake. One is you get the subjective experience, and then it leads to your psychological and physiological changes in you and the behavioral response. First thing you can't control, but your psychological changes and behavioral responses are relatively in your control. So we need to start working over it, and nobody else will do it. Lift yourself by yourself, as you rightly said. We'll take it as a message from you. Thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
We thank Shri Rajesh Rabindranath ji for his beautiful explanation. Thank you so much.